Hey guys, this is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to do something that, boy, I have not done in a very long time, and I want to make a video and have a conversation with you guys surrounding entirely Microsoft and the Xbox. So obviously, I've really become known for being mostly a Nintendo YouTuber who covers Nintendo and gaming news around Nintendo and the Switch for many, many years now. Of my almost 10 years doing YouTube, I've really become that. However, it should be noted that, and I've brought this up on other videos, I'm a huge fan of Sony and the PlayStation. I am, in theory, a big fan of Microsoft and the Xbox, and even when I first started the channel back in 2013, I really set out to cover all companies and all platforms equally. I started the channel after the Wii U had launched, but right before the PS4 and Xbox One had launched. So it was a very exciting time because that 8th generation was kicking off, and it was exciting to cover the launches of the PS4 and Xbox One as a small, nobody, no-name YouTuber that probably had like 30 subscribers maybe at the time. And it was a lot of fun, and I really set out to cover, again, like I said, all the platforms. But as the years went on, and as Nintendo just became more and more interesting, I ended up focusing almost entirely on Nintendo, and they are still my favorite company, and the Switch is technically my favorite console on the market, although it's phasing out, and right now I love the PlayStation 5 so much that I kind of really spend my time across both of those platforms. And so, anyway, I wanted to cover them all. I became mostly a Nintendo YouTuber, and it is the company and the console that I enjoy covering the most because it's my favorite company and they make my favorite games. But I do love my PlayStation 5. I own a Series X. I root for Microsoft because I have loved them in the past. The first Xbox and the Xbox 360 are incredible consoles. But we know since the Xbox One era, they've kind of struggled to gain back that mind share of the average gamer. And myself, as somebody who likes some of their franchises and wants them to be a strong player in the industry, I have also faltered on my Xbox fanship, which brings us to this current situation. So right now, the big talk of the town is a couple of things in the world of Xbox. One is the recent launch of Redfall, which, as we know, has sadly turned out to be a very disappointing release. And it makes me sad because I was somebody who wanted to be excited about that game when it was first revealed, even though there wasn't gameplay. I loved that Arcane Studios was behind it because I like them, and most of the games they've made, not all of them, but most of them that I've played, I've enjoyed. And I liked the idea and the concept and the character designs and the vampire thing, and it was a shooter. So I was all in on the idea. Then we saw the first gameplay many, many months later, and it wasn't as exciting as I hoped, but I was still all in. Then, of course, the game got delayed. It released just this past week, and it's just a big mess, and everyone is unhappy with it. And it's just kind of representing a bad look and a bad sign for Xbox's current overall games output, the exclusive first-party internal games that you can only play on the Xbox consoles or on PC. It's really not a good sign for what's happening with them. And so Redfall is a current big hot-button topic for Microsoft. And then, even more recently than that, was a recent interview with Phil Spencer on the Kind of Funny Games podcast. And boy, there was some very interesting stuff to take away from this interview. I loved this interview. I'm glad that he gave this interview. I am a big, big fan of Phil Spencer, and there was a lot to take away from what he had to say. So the general feeling and general takeaway, I think, from Phil Spencer's interview on the Kind of Funny Games cast, I think I want to say it was about 45 or so minutes. I watched the whole thing myself. The big takeaway is that he kind of exuded, to a lot of people, I think that he exuded a lack of confidence, and he exuded a lack of faith in maybe Xbox's ability to turn things around. And he didn't outright say that, and he still seems like a man committed. And it seems like he's trying to portray Microsoft and the Xbox division as a company and a team that's committed to making it work. But he also said a lot of things that made a lot of us scratch our heads in terms of how much faith that they seem to have in the platform and what they expect from the average gamer and the average consumer in terms of supporting the Xbox brand. And it was very confusing, and it was definitely disappointing. You know, I didn't hate the interview. I think there were some positives to take away from it too. And as many people have pointed out, I think it's great that he was willing to just man up and get on camera on one of the biggest gaming podcast platforms around, on the Kind of Funny show, and just talk very candidly and very upfront. He admitted things you wouldn't expect most CEOs or presidents to admit about their company. And he did that. And so I love that he did that. And it's why I like Phil Spencer. I think, for being the head of a huge company and somebody who's like, a millionaire or whatever, I do think he's overall a pretty honest and genuine guy. And so I've always respected that about him. So I liked that from this interview. But man, he said some things that, like I mentioned, leaves a lot of us scratching our heads. And it just has to do with the future of Xbox. I think if I was to sum up my entire takeaway from this interview, and also my entire takeaway of everything I'm seeing happen with Xbox this generation so far, just over 2 years into the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 generation, is I just feel like, and part of this is my personal opinion, okay, but I think that some of what Phil Spencer said in the interview kind of doubled down on this away. I see Microsoft as a company who initially bet way too much on Game Pass. They put all of their chips on Game Pass to be the overall business model that will support all things Xbox. And Game Pass is a great service. It is a great value, and it should exist, okay? I am not going to say that it doesn't, so I don't want you to take away the wrong ideas from what I'm saying, but I do think that Game Pass is maybe not the best way for a company like Xbox and Microsoft to center their entire home console business model around, especially when it comes to brand new games output. And so their commitment to Game Pass, I think, has actually dug quite a bit of a hole for them in this generation, which of course began in the last generation. And I think that he kind of talked about that and doubled down a little bit on that idea in this interview. One of the most baffling and confusing and honestly frustrating things he said is that he doesn't feel that just making good exclusive games is enough to turn it around for the Xbox and the Xbox brand. Which, think about that. That is mind-boggling to possibly contemplate, because it just makes absolutely no sense. It's one of the quotes that I think shows me how they're just doubling down on Game Pass as a service to support their model, as opposed to games bringing in consumers and bringing in new dollars. And one of the most famous quotes from this interview that people have dialed in on is in response to Redfall releasing this year, one of the first exclusive high-profile games to release on the Xbox in probably since Halo Infinite. I guess there was Hi-Fi Rush. So Hi-Fi Rush, a smaller tier shadow drop game that I hear is very good, so that's great. Other than that, there was Halo Infinite, which is the only reason I even bought an Xbox Series X, by the way. And then I think since then, it's been Redfall, right? And God help me if I'm missing something, but Redfall is the first one in a very long time at least. And in response to that being a broken game and an incomplete game and a 30 frames per second game and a buggy game, and it's got a lot to go to still make it complete, he started talking about Starfield, for example, which is a game I am super excited for. I will be purchasing that game day one, because again, I am not subscribed to Game Pass currently. So I'm going to be purchasing Starfield day one. So in talking about Starfield, he says, if Starfield comes out and is an 11 out of 10, and I'm paraphrasing here, you can find the quotes and I'll link it below. If Starfield is an 11 out of 10, it's not going to force people to sell their PS5s and buy an Xbox. And it's like every one of us rolled our eyes and smacked our foreheads like, dude, how could you so not get it, right? Because it's not about convincing people to sell their current consoles and not play the competing consoles. It's just about bringing in new people. None of us need to sell our Switches or sell our PlayStation 5s to buy Xbox Series X's, especially not today when the bulk of the gaming market are adults like me and a lot of you guys. We have our own jobs and our own disposable incomes. We're not relying on our parents to buy us new consoles for Christmas. We're buying them ourselves. I have all three platforms. I have a Switch, a PS5, and an Xbox Series X. So, Phil, I don't need to sell one of my consoles to buy your Xbox. I even happen to already have one. If Starfield comes out and is an 11 out of 10, or if Redfall came out and was like a 9 out of 10, or even an 8 out of 10, for God's sakes, that's a game that people would either sign up for Game Pass for, or would just buy the game. If Redfall was a great game, like I hoped it was going to be, as a non-Game Pass subscriber, I would have purchased the game, okay? I don't love that games are $70, but I'm willing to buy good $70 games. I've purchased several of them on my PS5 so far, so I would buy Redfall at $70 if it was a good game that was worthy of it. Starfield, yes, I'm going to buy that game at $70 because I know it's going to be good. I expect it to be broken at launch, but it's going to be very good. And so I think that Phil is missing the point, and maybe he even regrets this statement, when he says that people aren't going to sell their PS5s to buy an Xbox because of a good game. Phil and Microsoft and the Xbox company, if you make and release good games that especially are exclusive, people will either buy your consoles, or they will be subscribed to your Game Pass service, or they will buy those games individually. And all three of those decisions from the consumer means you're making more money. And what is it that's driving that more money I'm talking about? It's games. It's good games. And more importantly than that, it is exclusive games like Starfield. And so on top of screwing up the release of Redfall and not making a complete game at launch, I just feel like comments like these show that they're more committed, or they have been, I would say, too reliant and too committed to the idea of Game Pass to support the entirety of the Xbox model. And I find that frustrating, and I find it broken. To me, and this is just my assessment as a gamer and a game fan, that's all it is. I'm not a business person in this respect, but I feel pretty good about this assessment. To me, Game Pass isn't the kind of thing that you can build a home console market around. It's something that should support your other release and a strong cadence of release of good games, and especially exclusive games and first-party games that can only be played on your platform. When you rely on Game Pass the way Microsoft has, you end up relying on other companies, all of the third-party companies out there that release games that you can have as a part of your Game Pass service to drive business to the Xbox platform and the Xbox brand. And that can work to a degree. Let's not beat around the bush. Game Pass is doing well for itself. It is driving a lot of revenue to the company. How much of that is coming out to profit? We don't know. How much game companies are making off of games releasing on Game Pass? We don't know. But I don't think that the overall profit numbers look great for Microsoft or the companies releasing their games on Game Pass. But when you just look at a revenue generating dollar amount, yeah, Game Pass is doing well for itself. And in theory, it could even be doing better. So Game Pass has a value in that respect. But what happens is, and I think the hole that Microsoft got themselves in, is relying on other companies to support their Game Pass service. And then Microsoft, for too long, wasn't worried about making their own games that people would either buy Xboxes to play, or that they would subscribe even more people to Game Pass to just to play those games. And that's why I think we saw Microsoft in the past few years start to catch up, so to speak, by buying all these big studios, by buying Bethesda, which is huge, and now trying to buy Activision Blizzard. To me, I know a lot of people won't agree with this because the company is clearly very, very wealthy, but I see buying Bethesda and trying to buy Activision as just basically giving up, as basically admitting that they've lost the games battle, and instead of having been working on games behind the scenes and having been releasing exclusive games for the last few years, they've been trying to buy studios to just own those games that are already in development and then get those released. Think about it. All of Microsoft's internal games that they own that are first-party brands, Forza and Halo and Gears of War and Fable and Perfect Dark, some of these games that they own, Everwild, that have been even announced. I know Halo Infinite just came out, but outside of that, where are all these other games? All of Microsoft's IP games have not been releasing, and we're hearing from them that they are years away. That tells me that their focus hasn't been developing their own proprietary exclusive games for their platform. They've been relying on Game Pass and third-party games. Gee, I hope you play Star Wars Jedi Survival and Resident Evil 4 and Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption on our Game Pass service as opposed to PlayStation. They've been hoping people make that choice with other companies' games, and they've been not releasing and making their own games. And so where is Fable? Where is Everwild? Where is Perfect Dark? Where is Gears of War? Where is Forza? They're nowhere because Microsoft, I just think they haven't been focusing on that stuff. And now they're trying to catch up. So how do we catch up? Well, let's buy Elder Scrolls and let's buy Starfield. Okay, let's buy Call of Duty. Let's buy these huge properties that are already in development and we can hopefully get released on our platform soon, because these companies were already doing what we haven't been doing. They've been making Starfield. They've been planning the Elder Scrolls 6. They make Call of Duty every year. So if we just buy them, we've bought games. We haven't made games. We've bought games, and we're going to try to drive traffic that way in a form of, like I said, catching up. And so all of this, to me, just kind of makes Microsoft and Xbox seem like a confused and also a confusing brand and a confused company, Because on top of all of this, when you look at Game Pass, we also see them blurring the lines between Game Pass and the Xbox brand, also with the PC market. And I know that this could be a positive in a lot of ways to like the end consumer, because it's like, oh, I can play my games on both, and if I prefer to play on PC, I'm still playing my Xbox games. If I subscribe to Game Pass, I can play them on my PC instead of having to buy an Xbox, and that's a great value. I agree. But in terms of a business, it confuses the branding and the messaging, and it's something that I personally don't think is all that good of a business decision for them. Because what's the benefit of Xbox consoles if so many people can just play your games on PC? You subscribe to Game Pass, which again, right now has been their focal point business model. It's just about Game Pass. It's not about the games, in my personal assessment. And so you can't even use Game Pass to make people buy Xboxes, because people can subscribe to Game Pass and they don't have to buy Xboxes. They can just play on their PC. And again, I think that's great for the end user, and I applaud consumer-friendly decisions like that. But Phil, if you want to talk about things falling apart and not feeling like you have a way to turn the Xbox business around, well, this is one of the things that hurts you, is making things ubiquitous between two platforms. The Xbox console brand isn't really truly as needed as Nintendo's consoles or Sony's consoles, because you blur the lines between PCs. And so that also makes it seem like very confusing messaging, and I think it hurts the idea of people buying your hardware to play your games when you also make them available on PC for the same subscription. I don't know if it makes sense the way I'm breaking that down. And again, I'm not trying to be an advocate for like non-consumer friendly practices. Game Pass is very consumer friendly, and making Game Pass and Microsoft games ubiquitous between PC and Xbox consoles is consumer friendly. And I love that stuff. And if they can afford to do it while pumping out great games, then I want them to continue it. The only reason I'm talking about it this way and breaking it down this way is because, especially coming off of this interview he had on Kind of Funny Games, I think that it's showing us that these are the holes in their business that is hurting their revenue and hurting their ability to, I don't know, purchase game studios, or hurting their ability to make good games and drive business to Game Pass and to the Xbox brand. I think centering everything around Game Pass, forgetting to develop your own exclusive games, making everything confusing and ubiquitous between PCs and the Xbox consoles, it's like people have way too many options to throw their money at the company. And that sounds good on the surface, because it's like, yes, give us all your money. But that hurts things, because they clearly want to sell Xbox consoles and drive business to Xbox consoles as well as the PC. But people don't have to buy Xboxes. They can just play on PC. And they're also not making exclusive games that makes even more people than already do subscribe to Game Pass. I'm not subscribed to Game Pass. I am somebody you could be making that money from, Phil Spencer and Xbox, if you had exclusive games that I had to play on Game Pass or I had to play on Xbox. But you don't. And I don't personally play on my PC, so there's no reason for me to be giving Microsoft any money. I bought an Xbox for Halo, and that's it. I never turn my Xbox on anymore. Halo Infinite was a great campaign. The multiplayer sucks, so I never play that. I'm not going to buy microtransactions for Halo Infinite. Get the hell out of town. I never do that stuff. You would either be getting Game Pass money for me if you were releasing regular exclusive games, or I would just be buying those exclusive games, the first-party games, where you get 100% of the profit anyway. I mean, it's like, I'm not a business guy. I'm just a game fan of 40 years, but I feel like I understand this in some ways better than they've been understanding it. I mean, am I crazy here? I don't know. It's very frustrating, because I'm all for the Xbox, man. I like the brand. I like 3 companies with 3 quality devices, all with unique libraries, fighting for my gaming dollar by releasing great exclusive content on each of them, so that I buy the exclusive Xbox games right alongside my exclusive Nintendo and my exclusive PlayStation games. And then, when a multi-platform third-party game comes out, I get to pick and choose where I want to play it. Right now, my Xbox has no value to me, and most games are running better on PlayStation anyway, so I'm buying all the exclusive PS5 games that are coming out, and my third parties I'm playing on my PS5. And of course, with the Switch, it's a no-brainer. I'm playing all those amazing Nintendo games that keep releasing every year on the Switch. Xbox, to me, I think has lost the plot. I think their business model and their messaging to the consumer is very confusing, and I think that makes them a confused company. Game Pass is a great value, but I don't think it's the best way to drive your home console business. I think it has hurt them, and now they're relying on buying companies like Activision and Call of Duty to strengthen their brand, and that is probably never going to happen now. And so where do they go from here? So I'll end this by saying I still like Phil. I don't think he should step down. I think he's got the right idea and the right mentality, but the business model and their approach to Xbox needs to change and adapt. They need to drop this line of thinking of forcing people to sell their PlayStations just to buy Xboxes by releasing good games. No, just release the good games. Make exclusive games that are only Xbox, that are very good, and people will buy those games, or they will subscribe to Game Pass more than they already do, and you'll make your money that way. It's all about the games, Phil Spencer and Xbox. It's not about freaking Game Pass. Game Pass should be a footnote in your otherwise strong library of exclusive games, and Game Pass should support your strong library of games. But you've stopped focusing on games, you've been focusing on Game Pass, Redfall sucks, and now no one feels confident in Xbox, including Phil Spencer. So anyway, I think I've gotten enough out. That's how I feel about all this stuff. I really want to hear your guys' thoughts on this, and so that's about it.